Hi, I'm Diana Marzalek. I am senior reporter with Provoke Media. We are here today with a video podcast from the Day One Agency Studios. I am here with Erin of Day One, and we're going to have a special guest pop in halfway through, Rita Onyx, who is creator and founder of the Onyx Family Brands. And we're going to discuss Gen Alpha, who's coming up right behind Gen Z. So welcome, Erin.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Excited
so
to be
tell us a
here.
little bit about what you do at Day One.
Yeah. So I'm SVP of Creators and Casting, and that is our influencer, creator, talent team at the agency. So we are essentially connecting the voices that drive a lot of our culture, both on and offline, with our brands. So we do all types of influencer strategy, execution. I grew my career kind of at the time when the influencer marketing world was coming up, though. So
good timing.
I know, right? I joined like the industry kind of at the time when mommy bloggers were coming on the scene, and people were like, who are these new people? Like, what do we do with them? How do we, act? How do brands and these new partners work together? So kind of figuring that all out over the years, and was lucky enough to work with a lot of brands who are kind of pioneers in the space. And so, but now in my role at Day One, I've been lucky enough to work with a lot of really amazing brands who are leading a lot of really great influencer and creator partnership and work. And our team is just always kind of staying on top of what the latest trends are in the industry. And Gen Alpha is certainly one of the biggest topics of conversation as of late. So I'm really excited to talk about this today.
Well, I find that interesting because people are still, I think, getting their head around Gen Z to some degree,
Right.
And Gen Alpha is so young, the oldest being, 14 years old?
14,
right?
yeah.
So tell us a little bit about Gen Alpha, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So Gen Alpha, they're the generation right behind Gen Z, as you said. So they are kids who were born in 2010 through today. They are expected to be the biggest generation. I think it's like 2 billion people will be in this generation. But the thing that kind of defines them as a generation is they were all born in a time that fully encapsulated technology. So they have never known a world without social media, without technology. So I think seeing how they interact with that throughout their life will be really interesting. But we're learning a lot of them as this generation just keeps growing.
So are we learning about them now for the future, or are we targeting them now, or both?
A little bit of both. I think, there's a lot of brands who are interested in engaging with them now. I think, how you work with and how you target Gen Alpha is, of course, very unique in that, they're kids. So
Right.
you're not marketing to them in the same way you would market to Gen Z or any older generation. But yeah, there's certainly brands who are interested in working and starting to learn about them, experimenting with this new generation. And then, of course, we'll have learnings that will inform our future as they keep getting older.
Now.
Yeah.
You got a long spending.
We got a long time. Yep.
So you mentioned the importance or distinction of them being fully tech. How did you say it?
Encapsulated with technology. Yeah,
Yes, that's
they've
it.
just always known the technology
Yeah.
world.
So we're talking about young kids. Well, into young teens at least.
Mm-hmm.
Where are they spending their time online?
Yes. So we've done a lot of research into this generation. Having conversations with parents, with creators who are working with and creating content for them. What we see over and over again is YouTube is
Really?
the top channel that keeps coming up. They seem to really like long form YouTube videos.
Really?
Yes, which is, I think, funny as,
Yeah.
other generations, we aren't consuming content in the same way, but we keep seeing these long form videos are what they're excited about and what they're watching.
And what do you define, and I'm sorry for interrupting you, but
No.
what do you define as long? What is long form?
It's a few minutes or more. So like 3 to 5 minutes.
Oh,
up
okay.
to
We're not watching
30.
half hours.
They are, though.
Are
There
they?
are. Yes, they are. 30, even 60-minute videos are really popular among this age range.
Interesting, because everything we've heard is about the attention span, declining and get everything in snippets. But
Well, and I think YouTube Shorts is becoming really popular with the generation too. So that's, of course, YouTube's version of TikTok, essentially, the
Okay.
short form videos under 60 seconds. So those are becoming really popular. But we've had a lot of conversations with creators or parents of children who are saying their kids are kind of, watching these similar to a long form where they have it on auto scroll. So they're just kind of continuously watching it. So it seems to be the way that they're engaging. I will say TikTok is, of course, a really close behind for them. So YouTube is, we're keep seeing #1 channel, but TikTok is really popular, especially for that like older part of the generation, whether that's because of parents. I know YouTube has a lot of great features that helps parents kind of restrict what's available to the kids. So YouTube is one that parents tend to, seem to be happier with kids on. But as they get older, TikTok is introduced a little bit more, and we're seeing more of that like tween age starting to get into TikTok.
And how much are they consuming? Because is like the idea of limited screen time done?
Yeah. Well, we actually have found that a lot of parents are very involved. So they're very much paying attention to, how much time kids are on there, what they're watching. But watch time kind of varies. We're seeing on, I think it was like half of the kids who are active on YouTube are spending anywhere between like a couple hours a day to a little bit more. So a good amount of time, but the parents are very involved from the most part in what they're watching and, what's appropriate for them.
Right. And so what are they watching?
Yeah. So among all of the kids that kind of we've looked into, we're seeing comedy as number one. So kind of comedy, entertainment.
Like kids comedy, like stuff that's targeted to them from creators? Or
Yeah.
they're not watching like stand-ups that we...
No, different type of comedy. Yeah. It's more like sketch comedy. A lot of it is like by kids, other kids doing it. But then we also see older kind of Gen Z style, creators making content that they're consuming in this comedy way. But it's a lot of sketches. It's a lot of pranks. Pranks are huge. They love pranking my parents. Like they love that. There's kind of like the day in the life, just like silly follow along type content. So that seems to be really like what's gravitating towards them. I will say we've done a lot of global work though, and we've found with the comedy space in particular, it's really nuanced. So comedy is very particular to whatever country. So something that might be funny for kids in the US might not necessarily be the same in Japan or in the UK. So it's a little bit more of like a nuanced category. So that seems to be both boys and girls comedy top category. After that, we start seeing it like a little bit more differentiated by gender. So the girls lean a little bit more into fashion, to dance. So it's like DIY, get ready with me's, dance tutorials, those kinds of like fun things, trending music. And the boys, we see a lot of interest in things like gaming, so kind of watching other kids do video games or gaming hacks. They also like these like challenge style videos where they're like, trying to score a certain amount of points or go through this crazy obstacle. And those categories are definitely of interest to both genders, but that's kind of where we start to see a little bit of differentiation.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask, because there's so much about doing gender neutral
Totally
content, right?
Yes.
But
it's just
there
like,
are a number of boys and girls that still choose
either
differently.
one. Yes. It's really like kind of how they tend to gravitate, but I think all of those are things that are really of interest to all of the channels or all the kids.
Yeah, so you mentioned that parents do they choose or prefer platforms that they can have a little more control over and all that.
Yeah.
What role do parents play in their children's consumption of this content?
Yeah, we're finding they play a very big role. So they're really actively monitoring kind of what kids are watching, what channels. YouTube Kids is really nice because it has some features that you can really customize, like what your kid is able to watch. So we've seen a lot of parents are interested in doing that. But in general, they're involved. They're helping pick out what the kids are watching. We've heard from parents that it's kind of a way for them to like bond. They sit in the living room. They watch, instead of watching TV together, they might watch YouTube channels together.
Right.
Go through the content. So they seem to be very involved with what they're watching. And we've actually heard from a lot of the creators that we're talking to that the parents are actually getting really involved directly with the creators. So
Really?
yes, they're saying,
Is that cool, not cool for them to do?
I think it seems that. I mean, they seem to find it fun.
Okay.
They're like getting these parents kind of like reaching out to them and, just expressing their love of like,
Okay.
this my daughter was so inspired by,
that's
this
nice, yeah.
video. A lot of the creators are doing meetups. We see a lot of in-person kind of wanting to take this like offline relationship. So we've heard where parents are reaching out to creators and saying, are you going to do any meetups? We'd
that's
love
nice,
to come
yeah.
meet you.
They're not telling them what to do.
No.
Okay.
But they will send them videos too. So like with kids, with the, there's like kids who are recreating things that they watch on YouTube, and the parents take videos and they send it to the creator. So it's like they're forming this relationship, which I think is really cool.
Who are the parents? Millennials?
Yeah, it'd be like millennials, Gen X, young Gen X. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. What should creators, brands consider in creating content for Gen Alpha?
Yeah. So I would say, as we keep seeing YouTube Shorts for right now, look at those channels. Those are definitely where we're seeing the most time being spent. So looking at both long form as well as short form video on YouTube, as TikTok as well, kind of experimenting. I'd say experimenting in general. Like it's just such a, young generation. We're always learning. There's going to be new things we're learning about them all the time. So I think just not being afraid to like try something new. Creators are such a good way to do that. We've done that a lot where, we're listening to creators. They say, this is the type of content that my channel loves, and so we'll try it out with them. So I think just kind of being open to experimentation is really important. And then when it comes to the actual content, I think it seems like each generation attention spans get shorter. I know
Yes.
we're hearing that long form content is what they like, but the attention span is still shorter as each generation goes
Okay.
on. So just keeping that in mind when you're making content, whether it's kind of looking at short segments within a long form video, what can you do to make it really kind of fast cuts and keep it action packed and fast paced and moving along, I think is important when you come to like the actual production of it.
Well, and you're talking about also, I imagine, differences within this generation as you're talking about kids who are age 0
Yeah,
to 14,
right.
right? So you got the little kids at restaurants with their head in the iPad, right? Or you have 14-year-olds who are
It's true.
engaging and doing.
It's such a big, the difference between those, it's such a big gap. So
Right.
it is a very, right now, I'm sure as they get older, it'll be a little bit more closely related. But I think the other thing is creator-wise, to think beyond, a lot of times we think about like the kid creators, but I think thinking beyond just other kid YouTubers as way to engage if you're going the YouTube route is important. There's so many, Gen Z or millennial creators who are creating this like kid-friendly content. So there's so many different ways. I think that kind of goes into like the experimentation and just keep learning about what the audience likes, and particularly for whatever brand it is you're working on.
Excellent. It
Yeah.
also goes right into our special guest.
Yes.
And I'm going to let you introduce Rita, as you have a close working relationship with her, and
Yeah.
we're going to pipe her in via Zoom.
Amazing. Well, Rita, thank you so much for joining. Very special guest indeed. We are so excited to have Rita join us. So Rita is the founder, CEO, and the mastermind behind the Onyx, the Onyx Family brand of channels. So they have the Onyx Family, the Onyx Kids YouTube. You or if you're listening, your kids might be familiar. Hugely popular, but she's been a really close partner, her and her family, with Day One over the past couple of years. One of our favorite creator families to work with, and just really, really in tune with and helping to drive the culture among Gen Alpha and Gen Z. So welcome, Rita. We'll let you
Welcome.
introduce yourself a little bit.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Yes, I loved our partnership with Day One, and I just feel like it's a privilege to come and just talk about this ever evolving industry. Yes, we are the Onyx family, and we have over 10 million subscribers across all of our channels and platforms, and we have over 5 billion views of our content. We started in 2016, really out of a need for me as a mom to spend more time with the kids, and thinking, hey, let's do some sketch comedy skits and let's have some fun. And what's the worst that can happen? We just make some memories. I had no clue that it would grow into the empire that it is today. And this was back in 2016. So now in 2024, it continues to evolve into, to partnerships with people like Day One and other companies. And it has also evolved from longer form content to shorter form content, and we continue to adapt along the way.
Amazing. Well, congrats on such a huge platform that you've made and such an awesome audience. Can you talk a little bit about kind of, you mentioned a little how you started, several years ago, but kind of the evolution of the channels, which channels you started, how you added several to that, and kind of how you got a little bit more to where you're at today?
Sure. We actually started with Onyx Kids because This is back in the day when kid YouTubers were just now really getting started, and everyone started to see a couple of the big players like EvanTube or Ryan Toys. And of course, my son came to me and said, "Can I be a YouTuber?" And at first I was like, "I don't really know anything about this. No, I got to go to work." And then again, as I continued to work and I felt like this is a really busy time in my life, I thought, this would make him happy. Let's try and do it. And we did a couple of videos with just him. And then I thought, you know what? Why don't we get the older kids involved too? And we were homeschooling at the time. And so it felt like a fun activity as a family. So Onyx Kids was born at that point because, they were so young. My youngest was 9 at the time. My oldest was, I think, about, she's 2016. So she was about 16, 17. So I had that range. And I talked to them, of course, beforehand. I said, if we do this, I need a couple of commitments from you. Number one, do not look at the comments. I said, this is something where, if we do this, it has to be for our fun. It has to be for, just for us to enjoy. But I do not want you to look at the comments. And they said, sure, Mom, that's fine. And I said, and you have to tell me too, if you ever don't want to do it, just let me know, because this is really voluntary. And so we basically started from there. We had no clue what to do. And we just kind of learned as we went. And within 2 weeks, our life just changed. And that's how it started. Now, from there, they started to say, where's the parents? How come the parents aren't on here? And like, do they not have parents? And it was like, oh, well, you know what? And then someone said, you guys should make a family channel. So then we said, okay. So then we said Onyx Family. And again, my last name is not Onyx, but we started the channels with the name Onyx because I felt as a parent, these are my family jewels. And because we are Black, I decided that Onyx would be something indicative of who we were. So that's how we became known as the Onyx Family. I felt I had a little bit more panache than our regular last names. So from there, those are our 2 main channels. We do have other channels because we tried to dive into everybody's individual likes and interests. And while those are, some of them have really exploded, like my second born, her gaming channel has exploded. So that's another channel that we have, Shonix, where she does that, and which is really indicative of the time that we are in. And we have other ones that are more centered around the girls, and we have my son has his own. So we have several different channels, with the 2 main being Onyx Family, Onyx Kids, and then of course now even Shonix.
And are you still homeschooling in the midst of all this?
No,
everybody's like, that's what got me. I'm like, I'm impressed with the TV channels, and you're homeschooling 4 kids.
No, now everything is done. Even my 17-year-old, he graduated early, and I'm so grateful. That was a long struggle.
Yeah, but you got a whole career with them now, so they're in for the long haul. So how do you work with brands? Do you work with brands or in the creation of this? What is your relationship with brands and the importance of how you put this all together?
Oh, yes. So actually, we started working with brands even from 2016. And so between now and then, I can't even count how many brands that we worked with. It has to be, close to like 100 or more. Oh. And we worked with ones like from Netflix to Mattel to Disney to Hasbro to you name it. We've worked with them. Paramount. What we do is we create content based around, let's say, a product that they want us to feature on the channel, or to promote maybe a project that they have coming. And it's funny because when we started, I saw other people working with brands, and I thought, will we ever do that? And fast forward now, like I said, it's been dozens and dozens and dozens of brands. And how we do it is we just collaborate with them. They ask for a concept. A lot of times we give them a concept, and then they say, yeah, let's do this. Or another time they're like, actually, we'd like this. And then we're like, hey, that's fine too. We create the content, and usually it's well received. We're living in an era right now where everyone is used to that content. It used to be before where people felt like they had to apologize. Sorry, guys, I have to pay the bill, so I have to do a brand deal. Nowadays, it's like, it's just so normal. It's the equivalent for us watching commercials, when we watch TV, and right now this generation, like Generation Alpha, as you guys were speaking of earlier, they've never watched traditional TV. They don't really know about that. So this is their commercials.
It's so true. It's so interesting. One thing that we've heard from many creators and working with brands is that, especially with this young generation, is that they will get really positive feedback from their followers, like, "Oh my gosh, great job! You got this amazing brand deal." Which, to Rita's point, like we didn't see that before. It's something that I think is new with this younger generation, and that's actually one example of kind of how we've worked with the Onyx kids, was doing brand partnerships where we give them, a brief of, here's the one thing we want to communicate for this brand. And I think one thing that their family does so well is think about something that's so authentic to them and make it a really, really natural integration. So something that feels like fun that they're already doing. And I think, Rita, you were talking about earlier, this like kind of that idea of like keeping the fun in it. And I think that's something maybe you can speak on a little bit of like how your kids do this and when they're concepting and thinking of ideas, but everything that they're doing, you can just kind of feel that like fun come out. So could you talk a little bit about, I guess, kind of how the concepting, how they come up with ideas for content, whether for brands or just organically?
Oh yeah. So one of the main things that our brand is known for is sketch comedy. It's kind of like what you had mentioned earlier. It's just that has just been evergreen. And so when a brand comes to us, we really usually put it in that context. Now, it used to be where I would have to like come with the concepts and things, but now that they've gotten older, they come together, they discuss it, they evaluate how would this play for our audience? Would they really be interested in watching this? Because the goal is to not just get paid, but really to engage our audience and show them whatever product or project that we're showcasing, to really engage them. And usually it's through comedy means. So they'll come through with a concept, and if we're laughing, then we know like, okay, most likely our audience is going to laugh and really enjoy it. And then we also, of course, they run it by me, and we print it with the brand, and then we start the filming process. And as we go through the filming process, we make adjustments. We're very flexible in that way. We know that there is a goal that the brand has, and then we know our audience, and we really try to merge those two concepts.
What I find so fascinating is it sounds like you didn't set out to do this, right? I mean, did you work in entertainment? Are you just like a happy family that had a lot of fun and shot videos like?
That is such a funny question, because it's so true. I did not ever really think that way. I was a nurse practitioner, and I had worked in almost every industry as a nurse practitioner. My husband was a minister for 17 years. So we were just this like quiet, just regular family. My children were quiet. I had no idea they were this fun. So it was just like, it was so surprising.
Excellent. And so speaking to your audience, so do you target mostly Gen Alpha? Is that correct? Or you are your content, and whoever comes to you, comes to you? She frozen? Oh. I thought it was my question, maybe. I'm like, I understand it's a hard question, or not understandable.
We lost you for a second. Sorry, Rita.
Oh, sorry. Am I back now?
Yeah.
You're back, and when we were talking about targeting Gen Alpha, is that your specific, I mean, that's who you create for?
We actually target, I think we target Gen Z and Gen Alpha. The interesting part is that we find that younger and younger and younger kids are coming up to us, like 4, 5, 3-year-olds, and they know us. They know every single skit. Wow. The parents tell me they know us better than we know ourselves, because so many times they play it. And it's really, and then what we get from a lot of the Gen Z is, you guys are my childhood. Now, That's crazy to me, because they're all children to me still. But for them, it's like, you guys are my childhood. And now we're moving into this next generation that is seeing even a lot of our new and our older content. And it must be evergreen, because we're now seeing a second generation that is truly enjoying it.
It's so interesting. You're talking about kind of that like IRL component. I know it's something that we've seen. I know you've mentioned this before, Rita, is that desire for that younger generation to meet these creators and meet people offline. I think it's a really cool opportunity actually for brands to think about how can they bring these kids together with the creators that they love so much. But you've done some like IRL meetups and stuff. That's right, Rita?
I was going to
Yes,
say
I
you
mean,
need to do a
actually-
live tour. Like,
You know what?
On stage.
That is something that people definitely ask us for, is to do a tour. But yes, we actually have another one set up soon, actually, for a meetup, and the kids love it. They just absolutely love just coming in contact with us. I think that's something we did not anticipate. Like, we know that we were, we had a lot of views online, but now we could be anywhere. We could be on a cruise, someone will know us. We could be overseas, someone will know us. We could be in a regular Golden Corral in some no-name city, and somebody's coming up to us. And so we knew that, okay, having a meet and greet is important because they get so excited. And the parents, the interesting part is the parents, they come up to us and they say, thank you for making content that I can sit down with my children, have my children sit down in front of it and not have to worry. And that was always our goal. Our goal is that, especially with Gen Z and Gen Alpha having to deal with a lot of things, particularly over the last few years, all the things that they've had to deal with, we just wanted to bring a smile to everyone's faces. And the parents seem to be very grateful for that, and the kids are excited.
I love that.
great. That's great. I hear you also went to the White House.
You know what? It was during the pandemic, so we had to do a whole
A Zoom?
online thing.
Oh, that's
We virtually went there.
All right. Close enough. All right. Well, I appreciate your time. It's so interesting to talk to you, and congratulations on all your success, you and your family.
Thank you so much.
So with brands turning to Gen Alpha now, what are some tips for them to reach this audience?
Yeah. So I think, when you're starting to work with this generation, there's so many things, and I think we'll just keep, growing this list. But some of the things, as we've done several programs, we've learned, I think first and foremost is the importance of legal counsel, knowing these are kids. There's just so many, laws and just both legal, but then also ethical considerations in working with and trying to reach kids. So I think, calling your legal team as soon as you think you want to do something like this, talking about things like COPA guidelines, local regulations for states. They each have kind of different laws on how to engage, and then from an ethical standpoint, thinking about what are, appropriate working hours, how much can you really be asking of the family and of the kids in particular if you do end up working with a child influencer. And then even when it comes down to just setting up an agreement. So, you'll have some of these families have LLCs. Some of them you'll work with directly, but no matter what, you'll need both parental or guardian consents for everything. So having kind of all of that in place from the onset, I think is really important to be your first step.
Right, and it's probably not unlike child actors having worked
Totally.
on stage and all of that. So, I mean, you have to take the creator seriously, right? That
100%.
this is a deal, a job,
Yeah.
and a child.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Okay, great.
And then I think when you kind of start to engage them, the briefing process, being really clear about that is important. So, we have a lot of, times brands will have a really complicated message, or they'll have a lot of things that they want to communicate. And I think when you're targeting, or working with reaching younger audiences, it's about what's that like one simple thing that you want to communicate and really distilling it down to that, and then building the brief for a creator that is simply around that. So you can give them the information that they need to know, the background, but really what's that like one clear thing. Making our briefs really, really clear and simple is like our number one thing that we spend a lot of time on whenever we're engaging with Gen Alpha. And usually our last step before we get on a phone call with a creator is we take a step back and we look at it with fresh eyes, and we're like, if we were, younger, if we were a kid, or if we were a parent of a kid, was this really clear? Like, would we understand this? Do we feel like this is telling exactly what we need to communicate? And if not, then we go and rewrite it. But we've found a lot of really positive feedback from our creators that we work with in doing that, and that it feels very digestible to them.
Right, because they have to be able to handle it too, right? You can't communicate what you don't understand. So
100%.
It makes sense. Great.
Yeah. And then when we're working with the families or with kids, extra time is really important, especially for the young families. As Rita was talking about, there's, so many, there's, school schedules and they have things going on. So it gets busy. And so having that extra time, there's a lot of very well-established creators who are working with Gen Alpha, but a lot of them are newer. So it might be their first brand deal, or they might have only done a couple of them. So just giving them the proper time to do all of the steps, I think is a really important one. And then I think hand in hand with that is just over communication. So as you're going through the process, sending reminders, making things really simple and easy for them to digest, and just kind of being that helping hand along the way is really helpful for them. Yeah. I think creativity is really important too. So every single generation, millennials were different than Gen Z, which is different than Gen Alpha. So kind of the way they want to consume content, the type of content that they want is always different. And so I think, empowering creativity and giving the reins to the creators we found is the most successful thing that we can do. So we will, have that very simple brief, that what's that one thing we want to communicate, but leave the rest of it to the creator. So really trusting them, being open to experiment, and, kind of being open to new, different ways of working and different ideas. And
even
then,
if they're young kids, right? Because
totally.
You can't tell you don't know what to, unless you're acting, unless you have a script, right? It's different than being a creator, so you have to leave it to your messenger, so to speak.
Right. When we're doing our briefing calls, we're usually talking with the parent or an older sibling, or if it's a kid channel in particular. But we found that some of the best ideas come from when they're just sitting around the dinner table with their kids, and they kind of talk about what's something you want to make a video about, and the kid will kind of come up with something, and the parents will help think about how does this tie to the brand. But giving kind of that creative reins, as much as the parent feels comfortable, is something that has really paid off in the long run.
Great. Sounds really fun.
Yeah, it is.
Because it's fresh, right?
Yeah. And I think that these young creators and young families are so fun. So I guess my last thing I would say is just building long-term relationships. I think it's important for all types of creators. So it could be, whatever generation you're targeting, long-term relationships always have such a good payoff for both brands and audiences. But I think there's something extra special with this generation of, if you can, find those creators that are really right for the brand and for the audience, building a long-term relationship has a really, really long payoff for your brand. So huge opportunity.
Well, Erin, thank you for coming and for the conversation. It's great.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.